tremendous for the body, tremendous for the spine. And we're going to talk about that and many other things. But let me not put words in Molly's mouth. Let me let her explain what she does, and we can get right into it.
Yeah, hi, I'm a craniosacral therapist, like Roger mentioned.
Molly, I think you have your sound off.
Do I?
If you click down, yeah. And you'll see a microphone. It should be to your left.
No, it's on.
Yeah.
Can you not hear me?
It's funny because I was hearing you earlier. Why can I not hear you now?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is not you.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's me. I had my microphone in.
Yeah, okay, good.
We finally figured that out, you know. That's
Yeah, so like Roger mentioned, I do craniosacral therapy. I've been a holistic body worker for a little over 10 years, and I've been specializing in craniosacral therapy for like around 2 or 3. I met Roger in San Diego and did a session on him. I have a video on my channel actually explaining craniosacral therapy in depth, but basically it's a very gentle modality. I do a series of holds along the skull and spinal column, bringing the cerebral spinal fluid into balance. And people usually experience kind of a profound meditative state. You know, I'm working with the nervous system, so people go deep into their psyches if they're willing to go there. And Roger is one of the people who's, you know, willing to, you know, go deep, go within. For some people, they don't experience much at all, or they experience it much more on a physical level. It's like anything else. It just depends on the person and, you know, what they're willing to be receptive to. So that's it in a nutshell, I guess.
all right. And what are some of the other things that you do? Because you're multi-talented and definitely craniosacral therapy is fantastic, but there are other things that you do that really like the audience to know about.
Sure, yeah. So I'm a sculptor, painter. Lately my art is mostly stop motion animation, so I take sculptures and I, you know, bring them through a series of poses and photograph the poses and then animate that into like short animated clips. Yeah, a lot of my artwork also deals with holistic health, deals with the body, like the body as like an emotive tool. Yeah, I'm a writer, performer. I do it all. I wear many hats.
Fantastic.
As you do as well, I think, right?
Yeah. And as you know, I'm a writer. I do a lot of writing and vlogging, of course.
Mm-hmm.
As you guys know. I also I'm finally in my later stages, as I call it in life. You know, I'm doing the things that I came here to do, doing the things that I love to do, and they're one and the same. When you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, what you planned to do before you came here,
Mm-hmm.
you're always in your joy. And of course, I love teaching, and I love working with people.
Mm-hmm.
And at cwysu.com, I'm creating with your spiritual universe. You can see all the courses and the healing modalities and things that are done there. I work on the psyche, also work on getting rid of habits, paradigms, and addictions as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, through all kinds of modalities. And we're making a course right now called Building the Invincibility Within. And this course is really great because when we wake up to the reality, to what's going on around us, and we realize that it's a bunch of BS, you know, the next question is, okay, how do I step away from this? Or how do I step back into myself?
Yeah.
And sometimes there are books and there are teachers for that, but you really have to search for them. And what I really want to do is create something that people can go into right away what do I do now that I'm awake? What's next? And I want to create something that helps along that line, where someone can look into it and learn about energetic hygiene, how to cleanse your aura, how to cleanse yourself, how to clear yourself, you know, of attachments, how to clear yourself of the things that you're stepping away from, because they're not going to want to easily let you go off on your own. So how do you do all of that?
Sure.
And this course is about going about really stepping into yourself and being connected to your spirit, your soul, and your deep self.
Right. Okay. So what are the main modalities that you use with clients? Is it mostly like talk therapy, or like sort of like a neurolinguistic reprogramming, or like what specifically do you use to help clients through that transition?
The most important thing is speaking to the person. So I use a lot of talk therapy.
Okay.
I also use hypnotherapy, though I don't use the QHHT modality of hypnotherapy. I use hypnotherapy, and I don't specifically have any modality because I don't want to be boxed in.
Okay.
Because when someone comes and you're interacting with them, I feel that you have to be able to go wherever you need to go.
Yeah, I agree.
With them. So though I don't do Reiki anymore, that's how I started. I don't do that anymore. But what that did is led me into many different ways and studies and ways of dealing with people and working with people. And over the years, I've just developed a way of speaking and working with people in the way that works best for them. That's the best way I can describe it. Yeah.
Reiki's a funny one. Like, I feel like people are always trying to qualify like whether or not they're a Reiki master, or do they do Reiki, don't they do Reiki? But if you're doing body work, if you're working with people, it's, you know, universal energy, it's always an energy exchange. So it's always a form of Reiki, I feel like, you know. I'm Reiki attuned as well, but it's not like a modality that I specifically offer or practice.
Yeah. You need to go wherever you need to go. That's how I look at it. And all of that. Well, you know, recently I've had a QHHT session, and so have you, with a really, really phenomenal healer by the name of Aga Furtak. And this is a phenomenal healer. And one of the things that we want to do today is talk about our session. I know many of you have heard about this kind of, let's just say, hypnotherapy. And we're going to talk about our experiences with it. And for those of you who are not familiar with hypnotherapy, I'll just give a little quick overview about it and what it is and what it's not. It's not exactly the same as hypnosis. It's in the same family of hypnosis, but hypnotherapy and hypnosis are not the same. You know, it's not the look at the clock and then boom, you're out, and then you'll do what I ask you to do, and then and it's sort of like, it looks like a mind control. A lot of the things you see about hypnotherapy in movies, it's more like mind control, and that's not what it is. That is one of the things that it's not.
It breaks you out of the mind control, right?
Exactly. You know, you're fully aware. You have to be, for it to be effective, you're fully aware of what's going on, and you have to be an active participant. You have to be conscious of what's going on, and you are in control of your psyche. The hypnotherapist is like a coach guiding you. That person knows where to go. That person is connecting, or should be connecting, to your spirit and your soul, and in that kind of way, in that kind of connection, guiding you to what is important, unless you have a specific thing in mind that you want to be guided through. So that's sort of in a nutshell what it is, unless you have something else to add before we get into it, Mom.
No, I've found that the quantum healing hypnosis therapy, past life regression, I think, is a big piece of it, which surprised me initially. I wasn't aware that that's what would be included in the session. But yeah, I think you gave a good synopsis.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So, so I guess I'll start off with my session and my experience on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I had mine just recently, relatively speaking, in January
Mm-hmm.
of this year, 2018. And I was guided to do it because I was going through some things, as you take steps in life and as you move on through your journey, walking the path of your spirit, you get to certain places, and then that situation will require you to do something, or to do something to get over an obstacle. In my case, it was an obstacle. In January, I just went through this period where I was forgetting a lot of things, and things were just happening. And I just didn't feel myself during that particular stretch.
Mm-hmm.
My car was stolen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my car was stolen at the time. And there was a series of events that occurred. And I saw it as a wake-up call, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always, when things happen, the first thing I do is I go within, I look at, okay, where's my focus? Where's my attention? What am I doing? And then I take that into consideration as a part of being responsible for what happens in my life.
Yep.
And I also look outside.
Right.
I look at the whole picture. A lot of times we hear, well, if something's happening, it's because it's something within you. Well, that might be true a lot of the times, but the whole picture there might be something happening that's not having anything to do with you.
Yeah.
So I looked at the whole thing, and I'd met Aga at around the very same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was guided to to talk to her, but I have to warm up to people.
Yeah.
So I met her and we talked, and whenever you're with, you can sense, if you can sense energy, read energy, and be mindful of what is going on around you, it makes it a lot easier for your higher self, your spirit, to communicate with you. Because the concept of a higher self, our spirits, a lot of us, at least in the awakened or spiritual community, believe that the superconscious mind, the higher self, knows everything, can do everything, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
But we also have a role to play. We can,
of course,
our decisions, our decisions.
We're the ones that are here.
We're the ones that are here. And it ultimately is up to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can make it very easy for ourselves and our superconscious, our higher selves, by being open. Or we can make it really hard by closing things down.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that saying, as above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also so below, as above.
Okay.
And then, as within, so without. And I always add, and everything else in between. And so all of those key factors, that's basically talking about the law of correspondence. And every single aspect of who we are at every level is important. This physical body is important. Extremely important. This is where consciousness will grow or not grow, depending on what we choose. And so, I got to really know her and got to really, really, really become good friends with her in a very short period of time. And about 3 weeks in, I remember this dream that I had about a year before. of this person. I don't ski, but in this dream, I was a skier. And I went up the ski ramp,
Mhm.
and I got all the way to the top, and I'm standing there at the top, and I finally look down and I go, how the heck am I gonna ski down this slope? I've never done this before. And then all of a sudden a person appeared, and they said, no, I'll show you. I'll show you how to get down that ramp. And then she put her hand out, very tall, put her hand out, and then I said, okay. And then we went down. That was the end of the dream. And about 3 weeks in, that dream clicked in, and it was just symbology for a person coming in at a point in my life when I needed something, and they were going to help me. And that person was her.
Yeah.
Yeah. That person was her. And so that's the buildup around how I came to know Aga. Full name is Agnieszka. I call her Agnieszka because I like Agnieszka better than Aga. So, and so during the session, so I booked the session with her, and then we had it. She was here in San Diego, and so she prepped everything, and she says, what do you want to? I said, I'm not going to restrict where things need to go, because I want them to go. I want whatever it is to be addressed, because I'm not super clear on how to resolve what I've got going on, but I want it to resolve it at the root.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, okay, no problem. And we went in, and it automatically led to about 4 or 5 past lives.
Okay. Wow.
That's where it went. And I'm a present moment type of a guy.
Same.
You know, I don't always I go to where I need to go, but I always believe that if you're in the present moment, you'll be able to go wherever you need to go, past, future, present, because even when you talk about the past and when you talk about the future, you have to talk about them in the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. So that's where the session went. And the first life, I was a man, and with a family in a very, very rural country setting. Maybe I would guess it was maybe 100 years ago. And very, very tall, very, very serious kind of energy about me at that time. And I was a farmer. I had land. I had a family. I had all the things that you would that you wanted to have to be successful back in those days. And but there was this sort of with this person, with me at the time, there was this underlying sort of dissatisfaction, and perhaps with life. And digging deeper, it had to do with anger in that life. And so, and it doesn't have to be anymore. And that was pretty much it for that life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, nothing really complex. And so we have that little summary of what that visual and that life was all about. So we tabled that. And then the next life, I was a military officer. A military officer in what we believed was England, based upon how I was dressed.
Okay.
With red coat and all of that. And I was on this podium. It looked like this huge, let's just say center stage. Center stage is the best way to put it. And I was just basically in the vision, I was pointing my finger and telling people where to go, what to do. And it was in the middle of a battle. But it's funny how the visual appears. It's like it appears in a way, and everything means something.
Sure.
And being center stage, I was a person that craved attention.
Mm-hmm.
A person that had to be the focus of everything. And so being a military officer, you can build and you can move into that kind of being the center of attention and focus very quickly. The rules are very clear on what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, whether it be political within that system, and everything that you needed to do, you could get there, all the connections you needed. And I had managed all of that so that I could have that attention and the power I needed to just wield it however way I needed to in a system that approved of my kind of personality during that lifetime. And in that lifetime, it was about power and control, you know? And again, with a little bit of anger involved.
Yeah.
So that tabled that situation. So I began to kind of, and while I'm in this, and this is coming from me, while I'm in this, I'm fully aware. I just want people to know you're fully aware. Because right now I can describe the whole thing and you can't, I wouldn't be able to if I wasn't.
Right.
And in the third life, I was a captured slave.
Wow.
And it was very detailed, this life, because I was in West Africa. I was a skilled metal worker. Because contrary to popular belief, most of the time, the slaves that were brought here to the New World were the skilled workers, the chiefs. They brought the best of the best. They didn't go into the jungle and get just some person out of the jungle, because you needed someone who could communicate, who could assimilate, who could farm, who could work with wood, metal, who was creative, and who could adjust to the situation very quickly. And so, you know, you'd have these lists of the kind of skills and talents of people that they wanted. So many of the slaves that came here were educated in their cultures, and they're very highly skilled. And so they were highly coveted. And that was brought here. You can see that through the food and the music and a lot of the many inventions that they made, that, you know, and a lot of the instruments and music that they brought here. So I was one of those people, and I came here, and I was put to work in working with metal. That's in working with metal, and so I was in this situation, and I was working with metal and creating with it, amongst all other things. But I was taken away from my family. I was deceived into a situation and then kidnapped into it. Taken away from I had a family, I had all that all taken away and brought here. This was brought here to the United States.
Right.
And then I lived that life for many, many years, until one day I decided to commit suicide. But I didn't commit suicide. I killed whoever it is that I thought needed to go, and then I killed myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is interesting. There's so many parallels. My first session too, I had a life as a military officer. I had a life as a slave, a captive, and I had a life involving suicide. So
it's wow,
so funny all the parallels. But please continue with, you know, your experience.
Man, that's amazing. I can't wait to hear. By the way, Molly and I did not that there's anything wrong if you do that. We didn't rehearse. We are just going off the seat of our pants.
I never rehearsed.
We didn't rehearse. We kind of talked about loosely what we wanted to talk about. We one thing we had in mind is we were going to talk about this, but other than that, no. And that life ended tragically, and so you can imagine how much anger and resentment was involved with that life. And yeah, And then the last one involved, I was a writer, and I wrote a lot of books. Now I was a writer, and I wrote a lot of poetry and books. And according to in this life, I was very well renowned. I was famous for my writing,
Mm-hmm.
poems and stories. But I loved someone who I couldn't really be with because she was already married. She was, we're talking maybe 200 years ago.
Okay.
And someone that's, you're married in those days, you're done.
Yeah.
But we had an affair, and the only way that we could be together is to actually just leave and just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Which is something you just don't, in those days, that's, just to bring, in those days, that's something that's major, because most people never ventured more than 30 miles from where they were born.
Yeah. Wow.
That's it. So to leave a situation completely, leave a country completely, that's a major undertaking.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And I moved to a totally different, now the countries are not, I guess because they're not super important, they were not talked about, but you can take a guess. And I was guessing that, again, this felt like England somehow. And then I ended up going to a place, and then I ended up going like to Austria or Germany or something like that. It felt that kind of energy. It was distant, different culture, different language, different everything. And then we ended up going there. And then after many, many years, she passed. She died. And there was tremendous sadness. I never remarried, never found another. And then I just died alone. And it was, there was tremendous sadness. I could even feel it during the session, And so a reconciliation for that situation was done right there.
Yeah.
Where, because there was not a releasing of freedom. There was still an attachment within the subconscious
Sure.
to this person that needed to be released, and then that I need to be released from, so that there could be peace and a calibration back to what was normal, And that was my session, and this session's about 3 hours.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it when you finish up, but when you look at the clock, oof. So if you do get a session, don't think, oh, I'm going to have my session and I'm going to work afterwards.
Yeah, no.
After that session, you should have nothing planned, okay? Don't tie your hands by making plans after that.
Yeah.
That should be the So I ended up reconciling grief, sadness, and anger.
Mm-hmm.
Anger was the biggest of the three. Those were the three during that session, from things that occurred in lives before this one. And it made a lot of sense to me, because I had been working tremendously in this life on anger, in particular. Anger with my parents for the childhood that they gave me, anger with culture and society for some of the experiences that I felt I should not have gone through.
Sure.
But these things, at the end of the day, they all make you who you are, and they strengthen you, and they make you a better person in all aspects. And so this session mirrored what I had been working on, because you just take the lessons and the progressions and the diamond, and then you just get rid of the riffraff, and you take the lessons and the basically the treasure of your life, and then you keep that and you throw the garbage out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that's pretty much a summary of my session there.
Cool. Very good. So how do you think that, like you said, you were undergoing this period where you were forgetting things and things were being stolen, and like, how do you think the session shed light on what was happening?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. I think first of all, I think not I think, this is just, I'll just speak from my experience. As you walk the path of your spirit, you get to a certain, let's just say for lack of a better word, because this is not really linear, you get to a certain point, you get to certain levels,
Mm-hmm.
and then in order to survive, I should say, in order to be successful in those levels, some of the things that you were able to carry and able to ignore in the other levels or places that you were in, you cannot uh, carry those things in higher frequencies.
Right.
They must go. So they come up. Hey, this is where you're at. And to be successful here, to give a little analogy, to get, when you first started, to get to a certain point, you could walk and that was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And then the distance became a little bit more, it became more distant. So a bicycle was better, it was faster. And then the roads became more treacherous and further. So then a car. So now you have to learn how to drive a car, just like you have to learn how to ride a bicycle. And you have to learn how to do all of those things. And some of the things that you could do on that bicycle and get away with, you can't do in the car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have to learn how to live in that arena with the tools that you have there to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I quite, and then so once you get to a certain place, well, now you have to fly. You have to learn the lessons of flying. And guess what? You can't carry all that baggage like you did in the trunk of the car
Right.
on your back when you're flying. So that's how I see this. And so, raising my frequency, getting to a certain level, you're not going to survive with carrying all that anger, all that grief, even though it's very subtle. You got to unload that stuff.
Right.
So that's how the session helped me to see. Well, I knew there was something, and it shows up with me. It showed up with forgetting, which is another way of saying being distracted. For me, I said forgetting, but it was just a form of distraction,
Mm-hmm.
not being focused, not veering away from the things that I know I need to do, and focusing and I'm talking about myself during this time,
Yeah.
focusing on other things that just weren't serving me
Sure.
at that time. And so, I asked myself, well, why am I distracted? Why are these things happening? And so when you're sincere in that why, then the answers come. And like I said, I met her about the same time,
Yeah.
without knowing the connection of the role she was going to play in my life and the role I was going to play in hers,
Of course.
until I realized, oh, okay. And with me, the way my spirit works, the way my spirit works with me is, I'll get something, it'll be dropped in, like someone will come in,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll hear something, and she mentioned the QHHT, that and then she would tell, and she mentioned it again, and just normal conversations, just innocently, as a part of us talking about what we do as healers.
Sure.
And then I heard about it, and then I saw it on the internet. That's 4 times, and then I realized, okay. And then I said, okay, I'm going to get that done. And then something.
I think I was talking about this with you, but I think it's like more than 3 times encountering something, it's like spirit whacking you over the head with it.
I got.
Yeah.
And then finally I told, and then finally we had a conversation. I asked her about it, and she says, yeah. And she flat out said, she says, I think that's what you should get.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, I already know that. So let's book it. And we got it done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, those things show up in so many ways. And this is why, for me, reconciling the victimhood mentality is so important, because you could quickly see that as, why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this. I'm a good person. Blah, 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 blah. And all those are just little layers that block you and blind you from the message.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And by the way, immediately after that session, bang, everything started to iron out. Not like immediately. And that's when I knew, yeah. And then, yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. It was phenomenal.
Cool.
All right, so let's hear about yours. I'm very curious now, because we share some similarities. Now I want to hear them.
All the parallels are very interesting. So I'd known Aga a few years by the time I did a QHHT session with her. When I first actually started practicing craniosacral therapy, she and I were working at the same holistic health clinic in Chicago. So we were trading energy modalities pretty frequently. And then, she went off traveling for quite a bit of time and learned this hypnosis modality. And I was at a very low point in my life when I decided, I was like, anything that can help me, I'll try. I was, and I often find like life coaching, hypnosis, like I work very much in the physical. And if I can't like tangibly feel things, sometimes I think it's bogus, but I really trust Aga as a person and the work that she was doing. And it was basically just up against a wall where I felt like whatever I can do to help myself, I'll try. I had become really frustrated with being a holistic practitioner, being in this realm. I was looking, which it's like funny to me now, but I was looking for like an office job, just like I wanted like a 9-to-5, like I was like, I don't want to be creative and, kind of like this drifter. Like I want to be stable, and that world was just rejecting me. It was like, no, and I was taking it very personally. And now I'm like, thank God I didn't stuff myself into that box of that paradigm, because that's absolutely not what I want. But I had gotten to a place where I thought that's what I wanted. And, I had a romantic relationship that ended, and I was just like grieving over that so much that it was like affecting my whole like worldview. So, and I mentioned this to Aga, like, I think it's funny, every time I do these hypnosis sessions with her, it's like I'm in such a bad place. And so I'm like, I connect to these lifetimes that were like very painful and traumatic. And I'm like, I want to do a hypnosis session when I'm like thriving and when I'm in a good place, to see what kind of lifetime I can tap into, because I think, it would attract something more powerful and with a better message, not these like dregs of, trauma, slavery, all this stuff, sadness, grief. But anyway, so I didn't realize it was going to involve so much past life regression, which I'd done a lot of. I was part of this, like, I call it a cult now. I was part of this group in my early 20s where we were like using bodywork modalities to kind of open gateways to do astral traveling. And we would do a lot of PLR, but it wasn't like QHHT because it was very disorganized. It was this like open form channeling, and it was like, okay, whatever we can pull through, let's just like give it a platform. And it was just like a total shit show, honestly. Like, if there was no rhyme or reason to why we were doing this, it was just like, oh, isn't this fascinating that we can connect to these realms? But there wasn't I think with QHHT, what I really like is that it's like, it crystallizes it. Like you said, it gives you the little treasure, like, okay, what was the lesson? And like, why did the psyche experience this? And what is the growth point from here? And let's throw all the other crap away. But
Absolutely.
the group I was part of, it was like, you know, we just like dove into the emotions, and it was really crazy. But anyway, so the 3 lifetimes I went through in this first session, and so the first session I did was like a year ago in April. And then I did another one recently with her. But the 3 lifetimes I went through, initially I was a slave child. I was like a captive little girl in like, it was like Mecca kind of. And I was like sent out as like a beggar, and there was like hundreds of children that this really wealthy couple was sort of like keeping to have them, you know, steal trinkets and things that they could then resell. But it was just this horrible existence, and this little girl was trying to break free from it. And she would try to, you know, keep things for herself so that she could then sell them, so that she could get out of the situation she was in. But they would, you know, they would find everything that, you know, the kids would take back to this like tent with them. And if we tried to keep things for ourselves, we would get fingers cut off, and just really brutal. And we, you know, brought this to the moment where this little girl and like a few of her co-captives, her like comrades, had planned this escape in the night, but they were caught. And then there was this example made of them, and she was beheaded. And it was, you know, this incredibly emotional ordeal. And a practice that I actually implemented for myself after the session, because it was just deeply emotional, and I was really I'm actually feeling it a little bit now too, but just the emotions of this girl. And a practice that I implemented was to just listen to the recording of the session over and over until it wasn't evoking this emotion in me, so that I could sort of get past, you know, whatever of those feelings in her psyche that are still stuck to me in this lifetime, right? So that was one. And then there was another where this lifetime I was a very wealthy woman, but I had come from poverty, and I had tricked this like rich man into marrying me. And this was like somewhere in the Mediterranean, like pretty ancient looking scenario. And I had all these like servants and like housekeepers, and I was just miserable. Like it was this most beautiful like setting I'd ever seen, but this person was just completely malcontent. Like none of it was enough. And, you know, I connected to her at this point where she was just like yelling at her servants, berating them, but then feeling really guilty that she was doing so. And her husband's God knows where, and she really wants to know where he is. And she's just feeling so awful despite all this lavishness around her. And I came to her at this moment where she decided to kill herself, and she like broke a glass and like just slit her wrists. And I think I have a lot of issues. And, you know, I think at the time, like I said, I was wanting to find like a real job, and because sometimes what I do feels very precarious, especially when it comes to making money. And it was really showing me like, you can have all the trappings, you can have, you know, all this like luxury around you, but that's not what's going to make you happy ultimately. So I think that was sort of the big lesson in that lifetime. And then the last one, I was a man, and I was a soldier in the Confederate Army, and I had been separated out from my, I don't know, is it a platoon, my group?
Yeah.
Me and another soldier were completely lost in the woods, and just arguing about how to get back to the other soldiers, and wound up almost killing each other in this argument. And because we were making so much noise, we were discovered by the enemy side, and then we were beaten to death. And yeah, that, and I felt the blows, like I felt just myself getting the shit kicked out of me, and it was really it was really intense. But I think that what was more interesting about this was that this soul like never found peace. So he was like beaten to death and then just went back and just haunted his family for like centuries, just haunted this like home, because he had come from like a wealthy family in the South. And so it was sort of making peace at the soul level, between him and like his mother. And it was very interesting, all of that. But my favorite part of it was just connecting. So after we went through this series of past lives, she spoke to my subconscious mind in the present as Molly. And that was my favorite part of it, because it's like it's like all day, every day, you're just shutting that knowledge off. But as soon as you tap into it, it just is this like wellspring of information. And it, I mean, my life, I think, is completely different because of just being open to listening and like receiving what my own subconscious mind was telling me. It was like, you need to study meditation, and you need to trust yourself, and you know, these things that I wasn't doing. And then when I did implement those as practices, it was like everything changed, and I'm in a much better place, I think.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's amazing. That really is amazing. And yeah, yeah, and what I also want to say is that these sessions are not all about bad news, because these are
Right.
that you might have. No, they're actually good, because at the end of it, you relieve yourself. You're just so much more lighter. You're just
Mm-hmm.
so much more. You're at peace. You have this relief, and you're like, oh my gosh, no wonder I always feel this way, or was feeling this way before. Oh, no wonder this is how I feel about this certain kind of thing, and why I can't get rid of this thing that I've been trying to get rid of, because you know a lot of the times these things are there, and they come up and they show themselves in all kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
They show themselves in all kinds of ways, and sometimes we've had them around us for so long that we might even consider that it's normal,
Right.
except that you don't see it everywhere else. And then finally you get an opportunity to find out the why of things, and then you can sort of become more by getting rid of these things that really are looking to be released.
Mm-hmm.
We become more peaceful, more joyful in life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that. We're bringing out the blood and guts of it, but
Right.
at the end, the finished results of what we become after that is amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing, because I could say that between just a few months ago and now,
Mm-hmm.
is that weight has been taken off.
Right.
It's that weight has been taken off.
Yeah.
And we all have these things. So this is just one way of, you know, clearing and getting ourselves back into balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 So that's great. That's great there were so many similarities shared there in both of our sessions.
I think, it's these big pieces of the human experience, right? These are pretty common human traumas, and that gets, written into our genetic code. It's like slavery, grief, trauma, war is, huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm ready to step into a new paradigm, leave all that stuff behind.
Yeah. We've gotten the lessons or the
Yeah.
experiences from all of that. And it's funny you just mentioned the genetic side of it, because these things have an effect on our genes.
Sure.
And these are layers of shadows that if we lift them, we become lighter, and we leave the shadow aspects, of existence. And I should give an example of that, because that could sound like it's out there, but Let's see, what's one that I used one the other day in the video. Should I stick with that one? Okay, like one of the things that we have, just, and this is across the board with us as human beings, one of the things, one of these shadow aspects that I'm talking about, and I'll be doing videos on those in the future to bring more clarity, is the feeling of inadequacy. And that is something that almost every one of us has. It's something that I'm still working on
Sure.
because it's deep.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's in the human collective bloodline. Let's just say that, this feeling of inadequacy.
Yeah.
And it comes from all these experiences and more that we've just talked about. And each individual has their own that you know that you know, hopefully that you reconcile. And inadequacy shows up in the supposed need to store more wealth than you'll be able to spend in your lifetime. All right? Why do you need, you know, you see, you talk, I watched a show one time, this guy's a billionaire, and he goes, you know what's better than $1 billion? $2 billion.
I knew it.
And I go, okay, no, oh really? But you know, and I read somewhere, and I did check it. If you spend $1,000 a day for 1,000 years, you wouldn't spend $1 billion.
Right. Yeah. You can't spend $1 billion in a lifetime. I don't think anyone needs no one needs $1 million.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And it doesn't bring you happiness, because in my life I've had a time where I've had nothing, and I've been around people that, let's just say nothing as in what society says something is, you know, a lot of money, property, cars, whatever. I've been in a situation where I've had nothing and lived with people that had nothing based on that little definition. And I've been in a lifetime where I've had a lot and around people that have had a lot.
Yep.
And it's my experience that the percentage of people that are sad and unhappy in both of those situations about the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
About the same. It has nothing to do with how much you have, because you can get a new car, you can get a new house, and you'll be happy with it in the beginning. Yeah, they'll make you happy. We're not gonna, you know, you'll be happy. You go into your house, but after a while, it becomes just like anything else.
Sure.
You know, and then you're going, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Because you know, because that's how the ego functions. So. It's always wanting and never satisfied with what it gets. It's only satisfied in wanting. So if you're only satisfied or in the realm of only being satisfied with wanting, you'll never ever be happy with what you get. It's always wanting the next thing.
Yep.
So that's destructive, because you just deplete all the resources. So when you say $1 billion, you know what's better? Another $2 billion. That means you're depleting the resources and you're taking that away from other people.
Yeah.
For something that is not needed. Meanwhile, people are starving. The planet is being depleted of its resources, and it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
Pretty soon there'll be nothing.
Yeah.
You know, so inadequacy is one of those shadows, and it shows up if you don't do it through financial or those kinds of means. You'll do it through security, more security. You know, you'll resort to belief systems that are limiting, that tell you you need to give your power away to some person, some organization, some God, whatever. You fill in the blank there.
Yeah.
So you end up giving away your power, and you never end up taking responsibility for yourself and your environment, because it's something else that's greater than you. You know, this term, greater than yourself. And I do believe in that term, but I think it's also a term that can be debilitating, because if you believe in something greater than yourself, then the tendency, even though you don't really consciously intend to just give everything to that person, never take responsibility, you eventually are entrained to do that. So you don't take responsibility for anything. You don't, you know, You know, you become, you get roped in with this salvation programming, this savior programming. Something's going to save me. The rapture is going to come and take the bad guys away and take me off to heaven somewhere and all of this, without having any proof of that any of that exists. Because at the end of the day, the only savior you have is the one you look at when you stand in front of the mirror. So this shadow of inadequacy allows for this kind of dependence on other things, dependence on feeling secure based on belief systems and based on things that really don't bring any security, because ultimately the more security someone has, then there's the next thing to be more secure about, or to feel more secure in. Well, I now I've got God in my life. I need a man, I need a woman, I need a family. That'll give me more security. I need this, need that. And you just keep needing and needing and needing and needing and needing, because you're never really satisfying the core, the core of who you are. Because security can only come from within. And as long as you're not getting it and developing that aspect of yourself, you'll always feel inadequate. That's so that to rope that back into this kind of thing, you peel away the layers of that shadow. I'm just talking about that one, and then suddenly you lift out of that and you start seeing things that you just never saw before, because you lift out of that inadequacy and into, say, resourcefulness. And if anyone's really interested in finding out about this, just go to the Gene Keys. A man by the name of Richard Rudd created the Gene Keys, where they're basically mental states that are down in the genetic level, and you can lift yourself out of that through recognizing what they are. And just, I found that by recognizing what they are, that's one step, and there's an automatic, like a switch that clicks on, and you start working on it, and then the next level of what you need to do comes, and then it comes, and you address it, then it comes, and it's very gradual and amazing, and you'll just do it, and then 6 months later, 8 months later, a year, you'll notice a big difference between where you were when you started and where you are at that particular point in time, and it's magical.
Wow.
It's magical.
So have you ever drank ayahuasca, Roger?
No, I've never done ayahuasca, and I don't know if I'll ever do it, to be honest with you.
I mention it because when I work with ayahuasca, I really feel that genealogical healing happening, like stories of my ancestors and connection to my ancestors, and how my ancestors are alive in me through the DNA, and how they're here to keep seeking healing through me in this embodied form. That's something that every time I drink ayahuasca, it's really part of that whole experience. And I'm looking at this Gene Keys book right now. It just made me think of that for whatever reason. So
that's very, very interesting. I've never heard it explained that way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it really helps with going deep and connecting with your ancestors and such.
At least for me. Yeah. I don't know that that's a common thing, but I mean, it simulates the death experience, and I think that you have, just like personally how I feel on sort of an esoteric level, it's like you have all these deaths of everyone that preceded you genealogically as part of your genetic code. So when you're simulating that experience in this lifetime, it's tapping into that. And this also, this eternalness that is in all of us, that is the life spark, or like our light and our higher self, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, wow. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Yeah, and you know what? As you're saying that the little widgets are going off in the head, because I'm very much into, as you know, into herbs and plants.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I love working with plants, they're all over my house, as you know. And I have like a little mini apothecary here.
Yeah.
Is because these plants evolved with us. They know us very, very well. And I think when you do things like, I know that with my plant, with when I take herbs and stuff, I literally, I'm connecting to them.
Mm-hmm.
And tell them, hey, this is why I'm drinking this, and
Yes.
feel free to help in anything that you see, because there's this is a very, okay, I'm getting like this bulb going off. It's very important because we can have this, we can have this mentality, this very mechanical mentality. I'm going to take this herb because it has this vitamin that I want, and or you can have the mentality, well, I'm going to buy these things because of price and because of getting the best deal or whatever. And there's not a knock against any of those things. Those are all different kinds of ways of thinking, and there's nothing wrong with them. But then there's the other way is I'm going to connect with the essence of this herb, the spirit of this.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that I'm drinking.
I definitely have something to say about this. I don't know if you're finished or not, but yeah. So I was talking to someone about my ayahuasca experience, and I really enjoy the particular ayahuasquero that I work with because he, sings the Icaros, the songs of the plant, and he really calls in the spirit of the plant to the room after everyone's drank, and you can feel it. It's a visceral thing when he calls in this spirit, and it made me think the first time I drank it, I was like, God, the reverence that we have for this plant and for what it does and how we're consciously connecting to this spirit. It's so fascinating. It's such a big part of this experience. And I was thinking of how we like imbibe all these spirits on a daily basis. Like I drink a lot of coffee, I drink alcohol, I use marijuana, and these are spirits too. They're living, and in shamanism, it's like this idea that everything is alive. Everything is a living being with spirit, but we do this so subconsciously, like you said, like we're just like popping an herb or like drinking our coffee, and we know it's going to give us some physical effect, but we're not connecting to the spirit of the plant in a conscious way. Yeah. And actually, two of my friends, Aga and another one of our friends, I was telling them that I had these thoughts, and we were like, let's do it with marijuana. And so we like had a little bit of marijuana, and we're like really tapping into like, why are we doing this? We're altering our consciousness, and we want to go on a journey with this. And we, sat and meditated together and played music. And it was like the deepest experience I've ever had around marijuana. And, I've seen marijuana around casually, like so many times in my lifetime. It's like an artist and creative person. Yeah. It's never been that much of an experience. And I think it's approaching it with that consciousness and that reverence for the plant. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm glad. That's a phenomenal story. Yeah, that is. And if my advice to anyone, anything that you're eating, connect to it consciously, especially with plants, because they have evolved to become almost like a part of them is in us. Mm-hmm. For example, I think they just discovered that there's a gene within us for marijuana, for THC.
Oh yeah, the cannabinoid receptor. Yeah.
Or a receptor, I should say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So even our bodies have evolved to have a relationship with many of these plants. Right. It's evolved for that. And so when you imbibe or smoke or whatever, any of these plants, if you with your on a conscious level, like you just said, connect with these plants and become one with them, you will receive, like if you're taking it for nutrition or you will receive more
Right.
than just consuming it and then forgetting about it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because these plants know us. I mean, if you know adaptogens, if you know what those are, you know what, they adapt to whatever you need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're taking, for example, if you take holy basil or tulsi, you know, that's a fantastic plant. If you need a little energy, that's what you'll get. If you need to be, you know, leveled down a little, that's what'll happen. And that's what adaptogens do, and a bunch of other plants. They give us what we need. There's an intelligence
Mm-hmm.
within them that connects with us when we consume them.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. I'm glad that's a phenomenal story. A phenomenal story. So I just think if we change how we think about food, you know, not only will we start consuming the right foods for us, we'll start getting more out of what we put into our bodies.
Yeah.
At least that's been the experience with me.
Yeah.
Is, you know, do everything, including we talk about genetics here, and do everything, including repair and help us evolve our genetics. And that's already scientifically proven with food. Eating the foods that are right for you, you know, even healthy foods. Like for example, tomatoes. And tomatoes are a healthy food, but they're not so healthy for me. Yeah, and that's so healthy for me. So you'll start connecting with that. And if you really want to just go to know about that, if you do you know about the blood type?
No, I've heard a little bit about it. So is that similar to like the Ayurvedic diets or no?
I actually like the dosha system
Yeah,
of
right.
eating. It's similar, but it's different. It's different in that, and I know because I looked into the when I was figuring out a few years ago what I should be putting into my body,
Mm-hmm.
and it's even down to the individual level.
Yeah.
I looked at the dosha system, and then I looked at the blood type system, and I think they both work actually.
Okay.
You just have to choose one.
Got it.
And when you choose one and you stick to that one, I really think it'll work well, perfectly well. So I decided to go with the blood type system, and it's really helped me in it really like physically health wise. I used to have high cholesterol, high blood pressure.
Mhm.
Went to have a checkup. I was 30 pounds overweight.
Right.
And of course, I said, well, you have high blood pressure. Here's this medication we're going to prescribe for you. You have cholesterol. We're going to give you these statin drugs that you need to take. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. I will lose 30 pounds and change my lifestyle. I'll see you in 6 months.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it in 6 months.
Right.
6 months time, blood pressure down, cholesterol gone, high cholesterol gone, all balanced. All with food and you know, lifestyle change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think food is like the best medicine, honestly. But diet is still a big one for me. As like a Chicagoan, I like to eat a lot of junk. Um, and we've got that big societal thing where like if you're thin, you're healthy. So just like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I'm doing okay. But really, in fact, the last few times I've drank ayahuasca, the plant has like a distinct voice. It gives you information, and it was like you need to work on your diet, and so I need to start taking that seriously, probably.
You know, it's just like anything. You know, when you wake up and you're aware, you know, life still happens. You know, and I like to tell people, well, you know, Roger, you're this. I said, yeah. I said, you know what? I'm just like you. Just like there's nothing special about anyone that's awake or gifted.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that because we still have our issues, our addictions, our problems, our anxieties, just like anybody else. It's just that you might be aware of them a little bit more, or you might seek to deal with them a little differently. You know,
Yeah.
that's the only difference. Yeah, I have a sweet tooth. I will. You know, I can't bring cookies into the house.
Got
If I have
it.
one cookie, I can't have one cookie.
Okay.
The whole
Yeah.
body's gone.
Yeah, I have a sweet tooth and a salt tooth, and I love all kinds of Chicago heart attack foods like pizza and Italian beef
Yeah,
and all that garbage.
yeah. But
It's
it's still,
soul food at a certain
yeah.
point. I'm like, if it makes me feel this good, how could it be bad for me? You know?
You know, I tend to, what I do is I don't stop. Like I will have um, some cookies, but I'll buy it at the store and then I'll finish it before I get to the house. So that way I'm not denying myself.
Yeah,
You know, you have that taste bud for a reason.
sure.
But I noticed that whatever is in my house is what predominantly goes into my body. So
Of course.
that's the deal I've struck with
Yeah.
myself.
You didn't bring it into the house, you're okay, right?
Yeah, okay. Because what I have in the house is what I will consume most.
Yeah.
So I'll go and I have a cookie, and I found that by doing that, I'm totally okay. And if I get to the point where that that starts to not become okay, that's an indicator to me that maybe I need to detox or even do a parasite cleanse.
Oh wow.
Because then
Yeah.
there's an imbalance going on there, because what the amount of sugar that makes me satisfied, I already know what that is. And if that starts going askew, I know that that's an indicator to, to look into what's going on with my body.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
really,
sugar is really addictive, and sugar's one I try to watch out for too. And
yeah.
when it comes to, like these controlling forces that are keeping us in the matrix, et cetera, I think, food that's mass produced and readily available, a lot of that is, you know, a form of control.
It
And
is a form of control. You're right.
yeah,
You're
like
right.
high
You're
fructose
right.
corn syrup is, yeah, it's like a drug that's mass peddled.
Mass pedaled, and it's won't get too deep into it, but yeah, the sugar consumption, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
But I always tell people, don't, you have sweetness in your taste buds for a reason.
yeah,
Try replacing it with things that are sweet, that are healthy for you. But even with that, be careful not to overdo it. You know?
right. Yeah.
Be careful not to overdo it, and you need to have some sweetness in life.
Sure.
So, and in your food sometimes. So
Yeah.
don't buy Aunt Jemima's fake, high fructose corn syrup. Buy the real maple. Spend a little extra, buy the real maple syrup. And you'll find that after a little while, you'll get your sweetness taken care of that way.
Yeah.
And another point I want to really bring up too is, and this was my experience, when I switched to eating more plant-based foods, as I kept doing it, they tasted better,
Right.
for me.
Yeah. A
And
lot of vegans tell me that your taste buds get like resensitized once you start detoxing from, like, a lot of my friends that are very strict vegan, like they can't handle like white sugar at all, or like anything that's artificially sweetened. They say it's just like way too strong, and it's like
it
off-putting
is.
how,
Yeah,
overly sweet some of these things are. Yeah.
yeah, that's what happened. So now, yeah, there are things that are too sweet for me.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case when I was just eating whenever, whatever. It wasn't that case.
Yeah.
Now there are things that are just too sweet. So it just means I need less to actually get, what I need out of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a big reminder for me. I need to be more conscientious about my diet for sure.
Yeah, and the way I did it, Molly, is I did it slowly. I recognize, because I also work with people who with eating issues,
Hmm.
and not exactly, just like, look, I want to cut down on the sugar. I want to cut down on this and that and the other. And I said, just do it slowly, and then and then with sugar it's easy. Well, let's get let's make sure that there's good balance in your gut
Right.
so that you don't have too much of the bad guys and not enough of the good guys. And let's get that balanced out and see how you are then. Because for some people, that's all they need. They just need that gut balance. And suddenly they go, you know what? I still like to have an ice cream every once in a while, but not like I used to. I don't need to have, Pop-Tarts every time I pop into the store.
Yeah.
I mentioned that because that was one of the big ones for me.
Those are like hardly even food.
Yeah, no, it's not food at all. So, but it's all sugar. And of course, when you want that much sugar, the body doesn't require that much sugar. So there's something else going on. And it's usually right down there.
Yeah. Yeah. I joke often that I'm like a hummingbird, like I could just live on pure sugar and just maybe not very peaceful to be around, but high energy.
High energy. All right. Hey, this was phenomenal, Molly. This phenomenal conversation. Do you have a website that people can go to, or?
I do. Yeah, it's mollywilmes.com. So it's just my name.com.
Okay, fantastic. Lots of good stuff there, and not only services there, but also good information on a lot of things as well.
Yeah, I record content, and my artwork is up there, and the whole spectrum of me. So
okay. Yeah, check her out, and then you have a YouTube channel too as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So check her out on YouTube. Go to the website, and if there's nothing else, Molly.
No.
Okay. Always remember.
No, this was awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Great minds.
We should do it. We should do this again, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
All right. And you guys remember to defy the taboo against finding out who you really are.
Mm-hmm.